Welcome, everybody. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are going to present now a plan to help professionals. And this is our second session, why I am doing this work, remembering your purpose. This webinar is sponsored by the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or MHTTC, housed at Rutgers School of Health Professional Department and Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Consulting Professionals. My name is Carrie Belson Arredoles. I am a senior training and consultation specialist and school mental health lead in Puerto Rico of this center, and I'll be providing the introduction of this webinar today. Next slide. The MHTTC is funded by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, to enhance the capacity of behavioral health and other related workforces to deliver evidence-based and empirical support practices to individuals with mental illness. Please visit the MHTTC network website for additional information. I will put that page in a little while in the chat box so everybody can have it. Next slide, please. If you are interested in staying up to date with the events and products of the Northeast and Caribbean MHTTC is providing, please sign up to receive our email communication. You can sign in the Bitly link that I will put in a little while in the chat box also. Next slide, please. Following the webinar, you will be asked to complete a brief survey. We value this feedback and use it to promote our activities and inform future activities. The surveys are also important because our continued funding is linked to the completion of these surveys. So we thank you in advance for your feedback. Next slide. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted in our website along with the PowerPoint slides in the next couple of days. Next slide. This presentation was prepared for the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, MHTTC, under a cooperative agreement for the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. All materials appearing in this presentation, except the taken directly from our copyright sources, is in the public domain and may be produced or copied without permission from SAMHSA or the authors. Citations of these sources is appreciated. Do not produce or distribute this presentation for a fee without specific writing authorization from the Northeast and Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or MHTTC. At this time of the presentation, Dr. Miriam Dolphin Rickman serves as Active Assistant Secretary of Mental Health and Substance Abuse at SAMHSA. The opinions expressed herein are of the viewers of the speakers and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services, or SAMHSA. No official support or endorsement of DHHS or SAMHSA for the opinions described in this presentation is intended or should be interfered. Next slide. We encourage you to interact with our presenter during this webinar by using the chat box or also using the Q&A at any time. Next slide, please. The MHTTC network uses affirmation, respectful, and recovery orientation language in all activities. This includes language that is struggle based on the hopeful, language that is inclusive and accepting, or diverse cultures, genders, perspective, and experiences. Language that is healing-centered and trauma-responsive. Language that is incentive individuals to participate in their own recovery journey. Language that is person-first and free of labels. Language that is non-judgmental and avoidance assumptions. Language that is respectful, clear, understandable, and considerate with our actions, policies, and products. Next slide, please. So now is going to be starting our webinar. Our presenter for today is Michelle Segne. Michelle has been an assistant professor at Rutgers Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Consultation Programs, has focused her career on the promotion of health and wellness for people with mental health conditions, their families, and the staff who support them for over 25 years. She has worked in a variety of settings, including academia, outpatient mental health programs, family advocacy organization, psychiatric hospitals, nursing homes, and training services. She conducts research, teaches and mentors students and consultants with state psychiatric hospitals on the implementation of evidence-based mental health practices. She's also involved in family advocacy in New York City. Now I will leave you with our presenter, Michelle, and she will be starting our webinar for today. If you have any questions, please write it in the chat box or the Q&A, and we will read it during the presentation, or we will also answer them at the end of the slides. Thank you very much for everybody being here.
Thank you so much, Carol, for the warm welcome. And thanks to everybody who joined us. It's really wonderful to have you here thinking about your own flourishing. I know the first step is that we have to take that time out and focus on ourselves. This is the second webinar that we have in our series of Flourishing at Work, a plan for helping professions. You can find our previous webinars on the website. The first webinar focused on the importance of making yourself a priority as a helping professional, remembering that it's important to take time for ourselves and focus in on what we need. In this session, we're going to be talking more about our personal values, how they support flourishing, and then we're going to explore purpose. We're also going to talk about some strategies to build our motivation for flourishing through a purpose statement and do some of the small steps we're talking about. In order to really make ourselves a priority and take small actions each day, we have to stay balanced and live our best lives and commit to those small strategies to flourish. We're going to start out with personal values. As a helping professional, we're probably in this line of work because we care. We hope to make a difference in the world. I used to train in psychiatric hospitals, and we would talk about why we got into this field in the first place. I joke with everyone and say, is it because you wanted to become rich or famous or a star on MTV? We would all laugh because none of the doctors, nurses, social workers, rehabilitation professionals, psychologists, etc., ever went into their profession because it was popular or because they wanted to be rich and famous. So I'm going to start out with the notion, I'm going to assume this, and I hope it's right, that all of us started in our careers because we wanted to support other people in some way. And when I say other people, I mean children, teens, adults, older people, the whole age spectrum in some particular way. But let's delve a little deeper into the importance of using our values to guide our purpose and work and ultimately to help us flourish. So preparing for this presentation, I noticed there are a lot of websites about professional values, the things that companies value, like teamwork, collaboration, profitability, hard work, and integrity. And it's really helpful to know what your workplace values are, both spoken and sometimes unspoken. However, this series is all about you. To be resilient and flourish in our lives and at work, we should be aware of what's most important to us first. These, of course, may or may not be in line with what your work values are. Values are the lens that we see ourselves and our world. The priority of your values and the categories you place them in can become who you are and contribute to self-esteem, flourishing, and resilience. Values come from our family, from education, or even from overcoming obstacles. I bet if we did a survey here, I don't know if anyone wants to raise their hand, but many of us have probably been through a lot of tough times. I know I have. I'm assuming that everyone here has gone through some difficult times, and those difficult times also shape who we are. When we think about that, at the core, who we are, those values come from family, education. They can also come from spirituality or faith. Think for a moment about who you would say you are that reflects some of your values without naming them. So think about that for a second. Who you are that reflects your values. I'm going to give you my quick example. I'm a Midwesterner at heart, committed to helping people achieve recovery and wellness with a quirky sense of humor. Oh, fun, you say. From that statement, you might gather that I'm relatively kind of open, corny, get the pun there, corny, Midwest. Okay, sorry. And work as a helping professional with a terrible case of dad humor. At least that's what people tell me. So think about yourself for a minute. In the broadest sense, who are you? What has influenced your values most profoundly? If you're comfortable, I'd invite you to share in the chat who you are, broadly speaking, without labeling your vocation. So anyone who feels comfortable, I welcome you to tell me and all of us who you are. Values are those broad beliefs that guide our decisions, choices, and actions. Values probably influence you to choose your vocation in some way. As I mentioned, we're all here because we want to help people. Values may guide you when you need to make a difficult choice. For example, have you ever been working and then someone offers you a position that offers more pay, but when you consider it, the job doesn't really align with your values or who you are? Or did you ever leave a position that didn't align with your personal values? For many of us, I imagine that a great example, I don't know about you, but I've only worked a few times at for-profit companies because I feel so strongly about helping people. So I end up often working in nonprofit organizations because I want to make the world a better place, which means, has certain impact on other kinds of things in my life. I once decided to leave a position after I felt I wasn't getting enough support for some extremely difficult work making health decisions for my clients. I went to my boss and asked for support and input. His response was, he had faith in me, and he suggested, yeah, you could do this on your own. You don't need me. While on the one hand, it was a compliment to be told that I could handle this on my own, in another way, I realized it was a conflict in my values. I strongly believe in fairness and ethics, and I felt that one person alone shouldn't be making these difficult health decisions without support. So I left the position because of that conflict. I'm wondering, has anyone else ever had to leave a position because their personal values didn't align with your work position? You could go ahead and put that in the chat if you like. It can be really stressful when your personal mission doesn't or values don't mix with your work. And it makes it very stressful and increases the conflict. Building resilience and flourishing is connected to living within our values. If we're living our values, we're most likely to experience positive emotions and happiness. And if we're not, we're more likely to experience these negative emotions. So what I'm talking about sort of all of these kind of abstract things, but it really does connect to our flourishing every day. Our core values build our sense of meaning, of who we are, of our work. Our values help us grow and develop as people and make sense of what's going on in our lives. The past 2 years have made many of us reconsider our work, how we live our lives, and really what we want out of life. So many people have checked out their personal values and compared them with the organizational values and as a result, we've had sort of the great exodus that many people have decided to leave their positions and pursue other options. I'm not suggesting that you should do that, but I do think that we should be aware of what drives us, what we do, and how we do it. A recent research group examined values and how they promoted well-being in different parts of the world. Unsurprisingly, there are differences in the types of values that lead to a sense of self and well-being, especially around spirituality and the role of faith, politics, and materialistic values. So those are different across the world. There's even likely to be differences within our country or any other country based on demographic factors like region, education level, race, upbringing, faith. All of those really shape who we are. So let's take a second Here's a list of personal values. Let's go over that. I I think they relate to being a healthy helping professional. The ones that I really connected to, maybe you do too, are caring, social connections, compassion, generosity, and growth. But there's obviously a lot of others. So scan through this list. And as you scan, can you identify one or two that are really important to you? Are there any things that define what you believe and who you are? And if there are, I'd invite you to put them in the chat. Why are those particular values so important to you? What do they say about the kind of person you are? How do they influence your life? When I looked at this list, and of course, there's lots of different values lists. This isn't the one and only, there are many. I think compassion was the one that jumped out to me the most. I've tried to use the challenges I've experienced and turn them into positives to connect to other people and be with people when they're struggling, because I can relate to being in very difficult situations and then overcoming them. Oh, I see someone has put some things in.
Are sharing in our chat box. One of them, Denise Gavigan, says, "Good afternoon. Yes, I was trying to help other departments to stay happy and together, accepting a department head position, and it was a disaster." Thank you for sharing, Denise. Lauren Deptula, I'm so sorry if I pronounce it wrong. Open mindsets, spirituality, compassion, and social connections are ones of the values that she understand that it's more to her. Thank you, the two of you, for sharing.
Yes, yes. And it's really important. I think I just want to highlight, the first person who said, I sort of took another position at my job to sort of make people happy, and accepted it. And it really didn't work out well. And that's important to know what is good for you sometimes isn't good for your company. And sometimes what's good for your company isn't necessarily a good fit for you. And some of those values of open-mindedness, spirituality, compassion, and social connection, all of those are definitely linked to people who are in the helping profession. So thank you so much for sharing that. And as you scroll, feel free to add in the chat box any other values that you feel particularly drawn to. Interestingly, our values tend to remain stable over time, but they can evolve as we grow and change. Living a life that's close to our values really helps us be more resilient and flourish despite the challenges we may face, but it can be really hard to do. Definitely, someone else added integrity, and I think that's a really a wonderful value that we should be living by. I mean, I'm making a judgment there, but that is one of my values as well, I should say. There's always going to be people and situations in life that make our living close to our values difficult. But by knowing them, even when we can't actually act and live in alignment with them, allows us to know ourselves, and it might help push us into other directions or choices that we can make to address them. So even if you're in that job or situation that doesn't align with your values, you might consider how you might be able to work towards something that is more in alignment with your values. All right. So how can you identify these values? You might say, wait a minute, Michelle, this all sounds great and good and everything, but I don't know what the heck you're exactly talking about. And I kind of said that to myself too, because I thought, how am I going to find what my values are? Finding and identifying what's most important to you actually takes a little bit of time and some reflection. But there are some great online resources that are surveys that can help you identify your values, including the life values inventory that's listed in the resources. It's got a list of questions you rate your connection to, which help you identify the beliefs you most strongly identify with. Things about faith, things about helping others, all listing similar to the list that we had on the previous slide. And then it helps you prioritize what's more or less important to you and offers suggestions about how you might want to strengthen certain of your values or the values that are particularly strong. There are also other online sources that I've identified. Many of you may know Bill Miller and motivational interviewing, but he developed something, or someone used his material to develop a fun and interactive value card sorting activity that's also in a website, which is a lot of fun. I tried that as well. It has some great reflective questions to consider once you've thought out the different values. Another resource to consider is a good project out of Harvard University. It has some great resources to explore our own values and how to teach young people about values and exploration of values. There are just probably many, many others out there, but I really encourage you, if you're curious or wondering about what your values are, what's most important to you, to take a few minutes some weekend or some evening when you're scrolling with your kids or whatever, you're waiting with a client or you're helping, whatever, when you have a few free moments, that might be a thing to consider. Another way to identify some of your values is to have a conversation with the people who support you, your friends, family, or significant others, to get their input on how they would describe you, to get another perspective of who you are from the outside. This is an interesting activity, and I encourage you to go to someone who cares about you and knows you well. These are the big picture ideas of who you are, and you want to make sure that whoever you ask can deliver the information kindly. For example, sometimes people feel I'm too blunt, but they have told me in a way that isn't like, "You are so rude, Michelle, stop it." Rather, they focus on my ability to say difficult truths, but I know that sometimes I can be too blunt. And so that has become a value, is that truth saying, which also I have to work on how I express it. Um, so find those people who will share their thoughts with you in a thoughtful and kind way. Of course, you don't want to be smacked upside the head, or maybe you do. I don't know, but that's not what I really want when I think about my values. So, when you're making a tough decision about work, family, finances, health, you might consider some reflection about what's important to you and why a specific decision feels right for you. And I don't know if anyone's heard of shared decision making, but shared decision making also asks you to identify your values. And that's when you partner with a health provider to make the best health decision for you. The why, it's really important to know why you made it a decision in the past. Um, the why can mean it's in alignment with your values in some way. I remember getting a job offer once, and I actually made a decision matrix listing the pros and cons and then putting stars next to the things that were most important to me. When I look back at that, I laugh at myself, of course, because I was a little bit over the top, but it really helped me make that difficult decision. I realized that some of those starred pros and cons were part of my core values. So that's what made it the right decision for me at the time. It can also strengthen your conviction or sense that a difficult decision is the right decision to go, as I just mentioned. And some clinicians suggest that if you really reflect on a good moment in your life, a really good moment, think in the past 5 years, a really good time in your life, you can get some clarity about what's important to you. What were you doing? Who were you with? What about the situation made it a good fit for who you are? Looking back, you might be able to pull some of the values out of that situation. My belief is that spending time identifying what's important can be a great map or guide for your purpose, which we're going to be talking about next. So, we're most often resilient and comfortable and happy when we can live in a way that reflects our values. On the opposite side, we can feel extremely uncomfortable and unhappy when we're not able to act according to our values. The discomfort can take many forms like anger or nervousness or stress, and it can feel confusing if we're not aware of where it's coming from. So, what are some other reasons we should know our values? Going forward in life, knowing the things that are important, it's a guide for these difficult times. We know what helps us. We know what our true self looks like, which we'll talk about in a moment. By highlighting these values, they serve as reminders of what's important and how I can recover. So, if you think back over the past 2 years during the pandemic, what values arose for you that helped you to be resilient? Was it perseverance? Was it appreciation of beauty or gratitude or the ability to be flexible that helped you be resilient? Or maybe you experienced other values that helped you sustain in this difficult time. We won't always experience situations that align with our values, obviously, and we can't always control what's going on around us, but we can use our values and control how we react and the decisions we make in response. Research does connect living your values and happiness, especially when it comes to feelings of belonging and ways to help the greater good. If we have the values of helping others, which I am assuming that we all do, and thinking beyond who we are, something bigger than ourselves, that's highly correlated with people experiencing happiness. Being guided by our values can also give us courage to change situations which are difficult and not aligned with what we believe. It can also inspire us to stay true to who we are or who we want to be. If you've had a bad day and helping others, it can be really powerful to remind yourself that the work you're doing is part of your value system. Not every single day is going to feel like it connects to our values, of course, but helping to keep the bigger picture in mind will be useful for those tough days. So let's think about flourishing at work and values. I'm kind of curious. I think that our values are reminders to be who we want to be. They are about that thing that we call the best self in positive psychology, that person we want to be when we're at our best, when we're grounded, we're feeling accomplished, content, and able to manage whatever comes up in the day. We're using our supports and our strengths each day. So when you think about it, how might your values promote flourishing? And I welcome you to put that in the chat. If you could think of any way that your values support flourishing when you're at work. I know for me that gratitude is something that I try to practice every day. And it really does help me flourish at work because I express my gratitude. I try to be grateful to the efforts that I make, but I also share with the people that I work with, my coworkers, that I'm grateful for their help. I'm grateful for who they are. So if anyone has any ideas about how your values can promote flourishing at work for you, go ahead and drop them in the chat box. So we've talked about values. Let's talk about purpose for a moment. We've set the stage, and our values really shape our personal purpose. And I'm talking about personal purpose, which is kind of hard to say. I will say personal purpose. And it can get, my mouth gets a little wobbled up there. But when I talk about purpose, it really is also sometimes called mission, like sort of mission, purpose. It's to me an overlapping idea. I see someone thought of something about flourishing and they said, you know what? I bring in creativity into my work and it brings me energy and joy. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful thing that can help you with your flourishing. I like it a lot, actually. Thank you. And actually, creativity can be part of someone's purpose as well. Living with purpose means to live each day with intent and meaning rather than waiting for a purpose to reveal itself. So you kind of have that map in your head without external people telling you what to do. Someone else mentioned good health is part of how they live their values and flourish at work. They do exercise, walking, yoga, etc. Yes, absolutely. Good health is vital for flourishing at work and anywhere else. Thank you so much. So purpose, life is really full of distractions that could take you away from your true self. I understand that. I'm like the queen of distractions. Sometimes life's priorities are made more apparent by the barriers we face in achieving them. But sometimes it takes a spark of inspiration that light a fire under us to propel us into living more purposefully. Purpose can guide our decisions, influence our behavior, what we do, shape our goals, offer a sense of direction, and even create that meaning, as we were talking about. Some people feel that their purpose is connected to their vocation. meaningful, satisfying work. For others, their purpose lies in their responsibilities to their family or friends, while still others seek meaning through spirituality or faith or religious beliefs. And some people may find their purpose clearly expressed in all different aspects of life. So, when you're thinking about your purpose, it can be really helpful to ask yourself a few questions. Who are you? Wow, this is like, the very big existential question. Who are you? Remember when I sort of asked you at the beginning of the presentation, who are you? Thinking in a broad strokes. Also, what are the values that you have? And also thinking about what are you grateful for? What are the things that bring you gratitude? And then thinking about that inspiration, what gets me out of bed in the morning? You know, um, it's a good question to ask. And how do I want to be remembered? Life is short, and knowing that, we have to think about how we want to spend our days and to consider how to use who you are and what you offer to do good in this world. Well, however you define that. So think about it for a second about the legacy you want to leave the world with. What would you like to be remembered for? I know for me, it is not, I don't want to be remembered by my friends and family as a person who spent hours watching cat videos. Although I may do that, that's not necessarily the legacy I want to leave. I want to be remembered for being a good and kind person who tried to make the world a better place, which really helps me when I think about my purpose and how to refine it. I suspect that many of you have thought about your purpose in life and why you're doing the work that you're doing. But I think it's really connected to flourishing, and it's really kind of the another one of the building blocks. We talked about self-care and how important that is and being resilient, but purpose and being purpose-driven also is really a foundation for flourishing as a helping professional. So if you'd like to refine your purpose or maybe explore it a little further, there are a few things you can try. Discuss your purpose with others. Talk to a coworker, friend, colleague, or mentor about your project of exploring your purpose. Talk about the ideas about your purpose. Maybe they've evolved or maybe they're changing. Questions like, what's most important to me? What do you think I'm particularly good at? What are my greatest strengths? When do you think I'm most engaged? How do you think I'll leave my mark on this world? And these questions are really based on a practice from the Greater Good in Action talk with teens about purpose. But I think it really does apply with adults as well. You'll see the link to that in the reference section and also in the resources. You can also take the VIA character strength survey to see what it reveals about your personal strengths. And our last session, session 6 in the Flourishing series, is going to be talking about your personal strengths a little bit more. And imagine yourself at some future age, like 10 or 20 years down the road, and think about what your life would be like if everything went as well as possible. I know sometimes it's hard to focus on only the good, but just imagine only the good in this moment. Like, what would it look like? Where would you be? What would you be doing? What would be important to you, or what is important to you at that time? What do you really care about and why? And focusing on this ideal self of who you want to be and how you want to be can increase your optimism for the future, which researchers believe is tied to having purpose and meaning. It's also really important to know your values and clarify them. It's hard to figure out what matters. If it's hard to figure out what matters most, you take some time. I mentioned some of the surveys you could take, and these are also listed in the resource section: the Valued Living Questionnaire, Portrait Values Questionnaire, the Personal Values Questionnaire. They can all help you get clearer about what your values are. And lastly, it's really helpful to grow positive emotions, sort of making sure that we're broadening our outlook on the world and feel energized to take action for the greater good. So that can be really useful for finding purpose. And gratitude and awe, in particular, have been found to be most helpful in elevating your mood and helping people explore their purpose. Next, I'd like to show you a 2-minute video cross my fingers that everything works, that describes the value of living with your purpose through the work and what you offer the world. It goes over the Japanese concept of ikigai, where you combine four overlapping qualities: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for.
Take Steve. Ikigai, the Japanese secret to living a purposeful life, originating from the island of Okinawa, where its residents have the highest life expectancy in the world. Once called the land of immortals, the UN states that Okinawa has the highest proportion of centenarians to date. These Okinawans live by a concept known as ikigai. Iki translates to life, and gai describes value. This term refers to the things that make one's life worthwhile, the reason you get out of bed every morning. Ikigai stands at the crossroad of four main qualities: what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be rewarded for. The intersection between what you love and what you're good at is your passion. This is something that is truly meaningful to you and you're willing to make sacrifices for. Adding to the picture, what the world needs is vital, as serving society gives us this sense of belonging and purpose. Finally, adding on what you can be rewarded for is essential to make a living out of your purpose. Now, finding your ikigai requires deep experimentation and self-exploration. By pursuing concrete actions and reflecting back thoughtfully, you can discover how your passion, mission, profession, and vocation all intersect to bring more meaning to your career and life. Take Steve Jobs.
I think I found that, oh, well, stop. Oh dear. See, we all learn. My commitment to technology and growth has clearly exceeded my abilities, but I'm working on it. I really liked this young woman. She's a high schooler, Emily Biddle from Japan, but she was talking about these very interesting concepts that could inspire us, how we use our strengths as helpers in the world for our vocation. I'd really never heard of this concept before, but I think it holds promise in this realm that we're talking about, which is purpose for those of us who help others. On the hard days at work, I often ask myself, why am I doing this? Not with a sarcastic sneer, but with an authentic question, a bit of a gentle reminder to myself to consider why. Why did I go back to school? Why did I choose my work of helping others? Why do I keep showing up? And what makes me stay? When I was working on my PhD, it was hard. Like anyone going through school as an adult, I wasn't sure if it was the thing for me. I didn't know if I knew enough. I didn't think I could do it. One day, I put up a post-it note over my desk asking, why am I doing this? And when I answered truthfully based on my purpose and values, it was to make things better for other people, to improve services and make the world a better place. And somehow that made all the difference for me. On those hard days when I wanted to give up, I'd see this little yellow note on my desk asking me why I was doing this very challenging thing. Then I'd remember it wasn't about me. It was about the people that I was really committed to supporting. The Post-it note is a powerful tool for me. On the days I get overwhelmed by administration or paperwork, even now at work, I can look at the note and think to myself, oh yeah, I'm doing this because I believe in helping people recover every day. The title of this presentation is Why Am I Doing This? And I was hoping that we would be able to reflect on our values and purpose and use the reminder as a way to combat compassion, fatigue, and burnout and live a more flourishing life. The interesting thing is if you have a sense of purpose and you could try to live by your values, there's so much research in positive psychology that indicates greater success in life and work at together. Some of the advantages for living your purpose include better cognitive functioning. Yep, you think better, like problem solving, focus, and concentration. People who live with purpose are also experiencing less stress. When you're living close to your values, then it's likely that you'll have less conflict with what you do versus what's important to you. If a person's values, say, include respect and dignity for others, it may offer an ethical conflict if the workplace asks for tasks that feel in conflict for that. One example might be if those were your values, respect and dignity, and your coworkers and supervisors were actively hostile to the people you were trying to assist. That could feel extremely stressful and exhausting. On the other hand, if you work in a setting that has dignity and respect written in their mission statement and their daily practices support these values, it can really reduce stress significantly. Also, people who live their values and sense of purpose are healthier. Research shows that people living a purpose driven life are more likely to floss their teeth, exercise, and get to the doctor. Having a purpose also seems to be associated with lower stress levels overall, which contributes to better health. And there's a lot of research also in medicine about the impact of stress and inflammation and the contribution to a number of health conditions. All of this is a positive domino effect, which contributes to people who live their purpose actually living a longer life. Now we get to the most important question. Why am I doing this work? Many helping professionals want to help people and like helping people. Along with that is having compassion and empathy for the experience of other people. Some people may be in the helping professions because they've gone through difficult events or people they love have experienced difficulties and they want the system to be improved in some way. Helping professionals may also feel helping is their personal mission and an opportunity to change the world for the better. Of course, there are a lot of reasons that we get into these professions of education, teaching, health, or mental health. This list certainly touches on why I got into the field and why I stay. So now I invite you to take a breath, sit back, and ask yourself about your why. I'd like to hear from you now. Just imagine you're watching this river rush by and you're looking out, seeing the mighty strength of nature all around you, mountains in the background, stones, trees. As you're standing there considering your work journey, how did you begin? Why do you stay? And lastly, what makes your work important to you? Please take a minute to write in the chat the reasons why you feel your work is important to you. Just go to the chat box, type in a couple words about what makes your work important to you. Taking the time to reflect on this area is healthy, and it can really put into perspective your values and meaning and how you're living or not living your values. This activity gives you perspective. It can help prevent burnout and compassion fatigue. And by reminding ourselves our purpose at work can remind us of who we are and where we want to be going. For many of us in the helping fields, our work is more than a job, it's a vocation, it's a lifestyle, something we believe in and that we feel passionate about. And to flourish and thrive in our work, a greater focus on purpose and meaning will help. I see a couple of comments here. Someone mentioned that they want to give back for all that I have been given. And that's an amazing reason to be in this profession, is to give back a little bit. Also to empower others to feel that you are making a difference in the world. Someone else says, I want to help children feel validated while expressing their emotions and help them cope with difficulties. I want children to feel heard, as I didn't feel that way when I was young and teaching children mindfulness and meditation. That's really powerful. So taking a moment to just breathe, sit back, and remind yourself what makes your work important to you. That could be a tool that you can use, just like pausing, just like taking a walk, eating lunch, to give yourself a little bit of perspective and a little bit of reason and meaning behind the work you do so that you don't feel so stressed out, hopefully. That's the idea anyway. So creating a personal purpose statement. This is hard for me to say. A personal purpose statement or mission statement, we're sort of saying it's a similar thing, a personal mission statement, defines your values, who you are, what you want, and what's important to you. It can be used to help with decision making, help you stay focused, to meet your goals. It also can create those boundaries that we need to make decisions because you'll see your decisions align with your long-term goals or your values. It can also be sort of a guardrail to decipher how you spend your time, how you interact with others, and how you do your job. Deciding what to do with your time is equally important as deciding what not to do with your time. For example, if you've been asked to complete a task that's not in line with your purpose, it can be useful to speak up to your supervisor about it and maybe think about your career long and short-term goals. A personal purpose statement defines, yes. It also is really helpful to remember to brainstorm a couple of things. So brainstorm, how do I want to make a difference in the world? How do I want to be remembered? What kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? So in any personal statement, you want to have your values, you want to keep it short, keep it in the present tense, and focus on positive actions. But you do want to write out a draft of who I am, what do I do, and who do I do it for? And remember that this is a fluid document, right? It's going to be changing all the time. Also, it's really important to focus on positive actions, like the things that you will be doing rather than things you won't be doing. Like I'll be expressing my gratitude rather than I'm going to ignore the things that annoy me. So trying to focus on the positive. Um, Revise it as needed. And some people even say they want to display it. And I see another comment here. I want to help others access the resources that are available. Seeing others improve their lives is important to me. That's a wonderful purpose statement. Thank you so much for that. Um, and then having someone's talking about these philosophical life discussions with a family member and wanting to help others have those conversations to succeed in life. Absolutely. These philosophical conversations, some of us are comfortable with them, some of us may not be comfortable with them, but that's part of good self-reflective practice when you're a helping professional is you sort of think about yourself and your interactions with other people because that's your primary gift that you're giving the person is yourself every day. And knowing what that gift really is and how to use it is pretty important. There's some good personal purpose statement examples. I really like the first one a lot because I often think of, part of my purpose. I wasn't able to do this all myself. I'm working on it, just as we all are works in progress. But my purpose is to be a beacon of light. I love that part. But think about, you may be an educator and you may, some people already mentioned that they want to work with children and give them the tools of things like mindfulness and meditation, or they may want to help people, children be as activated as they can be as adults or ethical. So anything you can do to sort of put your purpose down, I think would be really helpful because in a way that's making yourself a priority and giving yourself that reflection. I do also want to acknowledge that just knowing your values and having a personal purpose statement is another strategy to help you flourish. By themselves, they may not be enough to help you flourish, but together with making yourself a priority, practicing self-care, and the other strategies we're going to talk about in this series, your purpose can help remind you of what's important in your life and that maybe flourishing is part of the purpose that you have in your life. A personal purpose, a personal purpose statement. You know, as helpers, we're often people who tend to give and give and give and unlikely to say no. We know that doesn't help us flourish, but sometimes that still happens. These are statements that can describe your convictions, what you stand for, and how you plan to live that life. It becomes your personal definition of success, not necessarily related to what others say, not necessarily what your supervisor would say, not what your work would say or family. It's really how you're defining success for yourselves. Sometimes we have to be motivated to do what's best for us, saying yes to ourselves when we have to say no to work or others. And knowing who you are can be so motivating. Just like the why am I doing this question, that always gets me to think about the work that I do and how important it is to me, and helps me forget some of the drama or politics, and stand with my values of helping with others. So personal purpose statement can be motivating, it can be inspiring, it can help us guide our decisions in taking jobs, in taking new roles in our jobs, in the kind of work that we do as we help people. And it's a gentle reminder to flourish. It's kind of our aspiration, the best self, the where we want to be in our life. And of course, it's great to talk about a personal purpose statement. And it's great to talk about our values and trying to live our values. But in order to do that, it takes action, right? The first action was you showed up today. Thank you very much. I'm glad you took the time out of your day to be here. Now I'm wondering, what's one action you might consider to strengthen your sense of purpose? And if you wouldn't mind putting that in the chat. So again, thinking about your sense of purpose, what's another action step that you could take toward being your best self and thinking about your purpose and keeping it on your radar? Any ideas? I know for some of us, it could be scheduling time. I know that's hard, but putting it on the calendar, or maybe an action would be having the conversation about purpose with someone, or maybe talking to your supervisor about some of the work that you do if it feels in conflict with your values. Thank you so much. Someone put in the chat, focusing on self-care so that I can fulfill my purpose. Absolutely. If you're not getting enough rest, if you're not eating, if you're not taking those breaks that you need, you're not going to be able to fulfill your purpose. And someone else suggests reading good books, sort of like, nourishing your mind and nourishing your spirit so that you can flourish. Excellent. Well, these are really good suggestions. Thank you. And this series is designed to focus on your flourishing. And I think of flourishing as like running a marathon. It's kind of, important to train each day a little bit and remember the long-term goal. I wish I could say you don't have to do anything and magically you are going to be flourishing at work and in your life. But the truth is, though, that in order to be resilient, thrive, and flourish, we need to put in a little time training. Each session, I'm going to encourage you to consider something to practice. And at the end of this series, we're going to have a document that has all of the practice opportunities in a plan that you can consider for your day-to-day flourishing. Last time I asked you to think about when you make yourself a priority in the week. And I hope that some of you took the time to make yourselves a priority. I don't know if anyone was able to make themselves a priority last week, but I'd love to hear it if you did. But given that what we've talked about today, I'd like you to consider some of your core values and when you've used them in the past week. What are your core values? When and where have you used them? Why do you do the work you do? Some people gave me some thoughts. I welcome, other thoughts, or this is really stuff to do on your own time. I think of this is a woman watering her plants. I sort of think about flourishing as a plant always, that our flourishing is something that we feed and we nurture and we water and we help grow. And then even to think about a purpose statement that includes your values and legacy that you'd like to leave. Someone gave me an action. Awesome. Access where my time is going. Make sure that some of my tasks are going towards my purpose. Wonderful. That's a great suggestion, is to think about the things that you're doing and do they connect to your values and your purpose? Um, that's a wonderful action step. So in summary, we kind of covered values and purpose and how they are a helpful guide and motivation and reminder of who we want to be. We talked a little bit about purpose statements and how that can be helpful to point us towards flourishing and keep us going motivationally. And we talked a little bit about the importance of small daily actions or these small activities that actually can promote our values and sense of purpose. I want to let you know that the next session in the series will be on January the 11th, Learning to Let Go. And I'm very excited to say that we are going to be adding a podcast companion to this series soon. The podcasts, we're taping them now, and I'm really looking forward to offering those. And you'll be some of the first to know when the podcasts are available, and those will be on our website. And I welcome any questions at this time if we have the time, Carabelle. Do we have any time for questions?
At this moment, we don't have any questions. I'm gonna also provide the link for our survey and feedback so you can all provide it to us. And thank you very much. I'm gonna write it there, but if you have any questions, anything you want to comment, you are free to write it and we will read it to everybody. Thank you.
Well, thank you everyone so much for your feedback and generosity of explaining why you do this work and what's important to you and your purpose. And I encourage you to continue that important work to prevent burnout and compassion fatigue. And as always, we invite you to give us some feedback about how we're doing, how this training is helpful, or what you'd like to see in the future. And if there are no other comments, thank you, Carabelle. Put that in our chat. The evaluation survey is always helpful. But I encourage everyone to be thinking about their purpose. And I thank you. I thank you for the work that you do and the time that you're putting in to yourself, because I know that it's hard when you're a helping professional, and we need to remember that we matter. We matter, and taking the time for ourselves is valuable and important, and should be always something that we consider doing to keep ourselves balanced and healthy and well, especially in this time. Are there any other comments or questions? Please put them.
No, I also added to everybody our email of MHTTC and also our webpage. I'm also going to add Michelle's email. So if you have any questions, you can contact her directly. People are saying in the chat box, thank you very much. If you have any other questions, feel free to contact us or ask us any questions in the room. Okay. I put all the emails over there and our page just to be there if you need something. I want to thank everybody to be part of this today. And thank you very much for our presenter to provide that huge information and is very valuable. I hope we can see you, all of you, in our next sessions. Just a reminder that our next sessions will be January 11th. To 2 to 3 Eastern time. So I hope seeing you and all of you again. And thank you very much to be here. If you have any other questions, we have only a few more minutes for you to write it over there. Michelle, if you want to say something.
I would love to say happy holidays, and I hope that everyone has a peaceful holiday season and a day or two off to for some peace and quiet.
Thank you very much, everybody. So this is our end to this webinar. Thank you very much, Michelle, and thank everybody to participate with us. I hope to see you next in our third session. Thank you very much.